Okay, let's take a few minutes to learn an important skill for 8th grade math. And that involves changing a number represented in a percent to a decimal, and from a decimal to a percent. First of all, let's look at the word percent and divide it into two words, percents, so that you remember and know that that means literally for every 100. Now that's important because there are two zeros in 100, and that's our clue to know that we're going to be moving the decimal two positions. Regardless of which conversion we make, we'll be moving the decimal two decimal positions. Now there's also a lot of confusion in terms of which way to move the decimal. A very easy key to that is to remember your alphabet. You remember that. A, B, C, and then we get to D, and then further down there is P. So if we're going to go from D to P in the alphabet, we are moving to the right. If we're moving from P to D in the alphabet, we are moving to the left. And that little visual helps us know which way we are moving the decimal. Let's take some examples and see how this information will help us. Suppose we begin with 80%. A pretty good grade for an 8th grade math test. Let's look at how we would change 80% from a percentage to a decimal. Again, we're moving the decimal two positions, and since we're going from percent to decimal, we'll be moving that decimal two places. When you look at the number 80%, you do not see a decimal given, so we assume it's at the far right of the number. So moving it two spaces, once and twice, leaves us with the decimal at this position, 0.80, 80 hundredths, or we could simply drop off the last zero and call that 8 tenths. 80% then is equal to 0.80, or also 0.8. Well, let's take a different example that often causes some grief. Let's suppose our percentage is 8%. Now that's not a good score on an 8th grade math test, but it's very close to what most districts pay in terms of sales tax. We're going to do the same thing, move it two decimal positions, and again there's no decimal given, so we're going to assume it's at the far right of the number. And because we're moving from percent to decimal, we'll be moving to the left. Same process, move it once, but now we're out of space. Don't make the mistake of leaving the decimal there because we have to move it two positions. We will use a 0 to hold our place there. So 8% is equal to 0.08. We can't leave that 0 off because it's a significant digit between the 8 and the decimal point. Well, let's look at one more where the decimal is given in the percentage and see how the process stays the same. Take 8.25%, which happens to be the sales tax here in Williamson County. We need to move that to a decimal representation to do math with it. We're going to move it two decimal positions, as is true for all percentage to decimal conversions. And again, we're going from percent to decimal, so we'll be moving that decimal to the left. Our decimal is here, it's given. We're going to move it one space, and then we have to move it that second space. Therefore, 8.25% is equal to the decimal of 0.0825. So those are three examples that hopefully will be clear to you now, knowing that percent is for 100, so there's two decimal positions, and knowing that from percent to decimal, we move that to the left. Well, let's take the other example, the other task of going from decimal to percent. Again, we're looking at a percentage conversion. We are still moving the decimal two positions. And now we'll be going from decimal, represented by D, to percent, represented by P, and we'll be going right this time. Well, let's take some examples. The decimal 0.75, 75 hundredths, you would say. We're going to move the decimal two positions, because we're going from a decimal representation to a percentage. 1, 2, which leaves us with 75%. Well, let's look at another example, because what if we have simply 0.7%, 0.7 decimal rather, or 7/10? I'm still moving the decimal 2 positions. I'm still moving it to the right. As in the earlier case, we move it once, then we look like we're out of space, but we have to keep moving the decimal. We will use a 0 to hold our place, and we have 70%. So the decimal 0.7 is equal to 70%. Well, we know that not all numbers are less than 1, and not all percentages are less than 100. So let's take an example of 1.20, 1 and 20 hundredths. How do we change that into a percentage? Again, we're moving 2 decimal positions. We are moving the decimal from D to P, so we're moving it to the right. We'll move it here, then here, and we stay there. So the 1.20 is equal to 120%. Now, that is a very good grade to have on an 8th grade math test. And it's my hope that this little example of how to move from percentage to decimals and decimals to percent will put you on the road to getting that percentage on your next test. Thank you and have a good day.